but I do know that yesterday you were involved in a conversation, outreach conversation with some people outside of the gun, or at least one person outside of the gun community, kind of having a conversation about things that are related to Walk Talk America and mental health awareness, suicide prevention, all these things, where from my understanding, this was a really good, positive, impactful conversation with someone who it would not be hard to say was at least pro-gun control most of their life, if not even a little bit like, I don't know if people need guns. Accurate?
Yeah, you know, I think a fair assessment was that, and it was actually two individuals, and these individuals are highly involved and highly influential and have the ear of their state's governor and the senators and a lot of organizations that have a lot of push. So these just weren't two people looking for a different opinion. These are policy setters. These are people behind the scenes that make things move and make things happen and are very connected at their state level. So they very openly decided to expand and have a conversation outside of the Walk to Talk America team, which has been doing a great job of conversing with them, educating them in different ways. And they wanted to just expand that conversation. I was blessed enough to have my name brought up. I joined the conversation, and the two individuals were, you know, they weren't spitting venom, but they were very clear about, yeah, I'm going to have to listen to your side, because without information and knowledge, I'm just going to go on what I already believe, which is we need to control these things. So we definitely got into a very good conversation.
So let's just, right now, if we ended the live now and just posted this out on YouTube to live forever, already there's a little bit of a myth busting going on, right? Because we have people who are already sort of in a mindset, people who are involved in policy making, advising, people who are involved in the mental health community, but also people who, as you go into it, you believe to be willing to have a conversation, interested in what gun owners have to say.
Yeah, they sought me out.
Right.
So
this is a big deal, right? So we get this all the time at Walk Talk America. We interact with these people. I do it a lot. But one of the static points we have in our community is, oh, they won't listen. They won't talk to you. You've obviously never tried to talk to insert your, you know, generic default, word, liberal, leftist, anti-gunner, whatever. But this isn't your first rodeo either, right? Like, you've had a successful experience down this road many a time, as have I.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very open as far as I could be open, right? There's always a level of respect you get to people with their conversations and being open. But I've shared out posts where I've had an anti-gun politician in my state ask for support and admitted that they are now pro-gun and going to challenge their colleagues because of our interactions in education, right? So I've shared that text message saying, like, hey, which way are you going on guns now? Now that we've had 6 months of discussing things back and forth, it led to that politician and other local politicians invite me into the room with their constituents to even speak. I've had individuals that are politicians on the senator level that are like, hey, I don't know what decision to make. So they've invited me and Mom Demands Action in the same room, right? And because I was open enough to have that conversation to educate that senator, then I got a chance to stand up and defend us, if you will, even against Mom Demand Action, and embarrass them for 3 hours. And I don't mean because I was yelling at them. I just mean because I had the more solidified points. I made the better argument for a pro-gun. But that senator is the big story, because he said, I don't know, but my constituents are asking me my opinion, and I don't. And I was, hey, that's like awesome. I'm so glad. Like I've had that happen several times, and now even that senator is understanding more. I'm not going to say he's all on our side, but you know, he's definitely understanding. Like, hey, maybe I need to take a look before somebody just says, hey, pass this gun control thing, because it's not what I believe that it is. So I've had that happen several times, man. So we always have to be open for the conversation.
Now kind of goes right back to another kind of a piece of the myth, right? This idea that one of them, you went into a room, in that scenario, you went into a room with someone who was clearly, you said Moms Demand Action, like clearly aligned with gun control, right? So it's, I won't sit down with them. I'm not going to go there. They're just going to twist my words. They're going to make me look dumb with their attacks. Like all these things we hear a lot as well. Once again, not your experience, whether they've tried or not, right? Not your experience, not my experience. So the next piece of the puzzle that I think is important is talking about the start of those conversations, right? How do you start those? And you can go into the details from yesterday or just in general, because I think, again, more and more, right, the people that are holding the keys to power right now in our country at the federal level certainly are leaning left, leaning pro-gun control, maybe leaning anti-gun. There's an agenda clearly out of the White House. We're going to need to have these conversations more and more often, unless we just want to sit back and wait and see what happens, right?
Right.
So how do you go about getting them started once you're in the room? Once you know the person or you believe the person to really be genuinely interested in the conversation?
Yeah, you have to study that individual, right? So if you've already gotten to the point to where they're interested in having a conversation, because you can't talk to a brick wall, right?
Right.
But once they say that they're open to have the conversation, you got to do a little research on the person, right? Are they going to come to you with a story involving a firearm or something violent that happened in their lifetime, right? Was that story public? So did social media hype it up and make it extremely emotional for them? Or did they come from a pro-gun family, but they hate their dad because he was drunk and he beat mom, and that's, they aligned all gun owners like that. So just have to do a little bit of history about them. And then once you do, you'll know how to approach that individual, right? Because I'm not going to go screaming, hey, you need to be pro-gun and you're violating my civil rights, if a woman just lost her dad to a dude breaking in her house, shooting him in the face 3 months ago. I'm not going to do that, right? There has to be a certain way that you approach the situation based on the individual that you're dealing with. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't stand your ground. It doesn't mean that you don't bring your convictions. It means that you just know how to administer this medication of truth, if you will, when you're having this conversation with this particular person. And you have to, one of the heaviest things that we have to learn, because it is our civil right, it is our human right, it is hard not to take it personal. But you can't take it personal in a conversation.
No.
It is very hard to do. You have to listen to them, because if you're ready to fight, you're not listening to the individual conveying information to you, right? And you don't know how many other people are aligned with them who are just as curious, and they're looking for someone to introduce them to a different thought process. They're looking for someone to challenge them in a good way. And if you just, are defensive and you start barking orders and barking back and screaming at them, well, you're right in principle. But do you want to win, right?
Sure.
And so you need to make sure you're paying attention, because you can be right and lose. So I ask people all the time, do you want to be right or do you want to win? All right. And it doesn't mean that you have to sell out your truth. It doesn't mean you have to, backpedal on anything. It just means that you need to be methodical and calculated about the way that you administer your words and who you're talking to. So I'm always, able to walk in those rooms. And I think one thing that does help me and helps several other individuals I know is that we don't have a political identity. So that is gone. There is no, oh, this Republican guy is coming in and talk to me, right? There is none of that. It's kind of like, no. So if they start throwing that, like, well, the Republican Party, I'm like, who, them?
Yeah, where?
Because you're not like, right. You're not attacking me because I don't have a political identity. My alignment is with the Constitution, with the truth, and the civil and human rights of Americans. That's where my alignment is, and I align with anybody that agrees with that. So when I'm talking to them, just to wrap up the answer is, understand the individual you're having a conversation with. If you're ever going to debate somebody, and I think that's something that we're missing, I think that everybody that does this should watch debates, and not just debates on the subject matter. I mean, just debates in the art of debate. You need to research your opponent. You have to understand where they're going to come from, and please understand where they might have you at a weakness. And once you've done that and you're convicted in your morals, and you're eloquent and articulate with your distribution of information, and you speak from the heart and you speak with truth, and you're willing to listen to them, right? And even from a debate format, I have to listen to you to know how to even beat you up on your own points, right? So I got to be able to take that information in, and then distribute whatever vaccine, if you will, that needs to be given back for the poison that they might be misguided about, and be willing to let them know that even after that conversation, I am still a constant resource for you, even if we didn't get along. Right. You can still call me, you can still reach out, and I'm more than willing to have a conversation with you. Rob, I tell people all the time, man, I knew hundreds of left-leaning Democratic gun owners before I ever met any one Republican gun owner, because of where I grew up at, right? So for me, it's understanding how to have the conversation, and sometimes you have to enlighten people to how their decision and how their words are truly impacting everybody, because realistically, they really don't know.
Yeah,
they're really in their own bubble and think that they're only protecting their own little family or something, or their own little community, they really don't know how they can be sacrificing the rights of other people to the degree that, say, you and I would understand.
And it's not just family. I mean, you say it's not literal family. It's whatever that bubble is, whatever that echo chamber is, or that demographic. So two things. One, you talked about, well, I got a little reminder here. You know how I'll go off on those tangents. So the one thing you said in there that I think is really important is understanding how to debate, not argue necessarily, although technically argument, if you go to the classical concept of argument, that's embedded in debate logic. What we see on the television isn't a debate. So when you say watch debates, we're not talking about watching, like, even if you go back, what, 15 years, 20 years, Hannity and Combs, like that was just people lobbing talking points at each other. When you watch someone on the news, we have a conservative person and a liberal person, and they're going to talk about their points. They very rarely do what you said there very specifically, was listen to what the other person's saying and then respond to it, right? They're just going down their talking points. And the problem with the talking points is, again, something you mentioned, you can't walk in the room and just be throwing out either your beliefs about what's right or facts, statistics even, because that's not engaging, right? It's not going to be engaging to the human being that's there. And like you said, if, you know, even I can imagine there's people out there, they're like, oh, well, if someone just lost their family member to a robbery, I'm going to point out how they could have killed the bad guy. They would have protected themselves if they would have had a gun. It's like, that could be the most tone-deaf thing in the world, right? If the person's not coming to you as an instructor and saying, hey, this happened to my family, I want to learn how to do it. And even then, I will counsel them, look, I get where you are, but the gun may or may not have solved that problem, and the gun may or may not solve your next problem. Let's make sure you're looking at this comprehensively, and let's talk about it, right? Let's actually get into it. That debate issue has to, as you said, be disconnected from the personal. There was a recent conversation I had, and a few people jumped in on it, this idea that, and I think this person was very, very sincere, and they said, well, if you just take the word gun in any sentence or any conversation or any debate and replace it with freedom, then you'll understand. Like, then people will understand. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's not real. Like, you can't just magically, you know, there isn't a pro freedom control movement. There isn't an anti-freedom politician. And we can joke about it. We can say, oh, that person doesn't agree with my view of freedom. But there literally is a anti-gun concept. There is a pro-gun control concept, right? There is a pro-gun rights concept. Nobody's running around going, I'm against freedom, right? So you can't, you may emotionally feel that the gun is equivalent to your freedom, that it is the most important civil right, that it is the right that defends all the others, that without guns, we don't have true freedom. You may feel that way, but if somebody isn't already on our team, you can't go there. And then the last thing, before I ask you the next question, is this idea of debate and understanding debate. We talk about it in our instructor development classes. We get into understanding classical debate and argument, right? Because you're in a class and somebody raises their hand and says, well, my dad taught me this. Well, you can't just say, well, your dad's probably dumb and move on, right? You may want to engage in a conversation about it. And the best book, and you'll see it's not very thick, the best primer, the best reading, I believe, that exists in the Western world, real simple, real fast read. If you want to understand how to make an argument and how to take some accusations that you believe are false or that you know to be false and spin them around, read The Apology of Socrates by Plato. It is the most concise and elegant and beautiful use of argument, I think, that exists in Western literature, and it's a simple, fast read. So if you're interested in what I'm talking about, what Kevin's talking about, you want to be better at debate and argument, start there. Plato's Apology of Socrates. Next question for you. Specific to yesterday, because I kind of already know at least I got one person's perspective that was sort of, in the virtual room. What do you think was that impact? So you set it up. They're a person who's influential in terms of policy. They are interested in the topic, and they probably lean towards, yeah, the world would just maybe be better if we didn't all have guns. And where do you feel like, was it from 0 to 10? Was it from 0 to 3? Where do you feel like that movement, if there was movement? I understand there may have been movement. What do you think from yesterday?
Well, from that conversation, the way that it ended, and especially the kind of the capstone, I'm going to say that worst case, they're taking a pause. They're not making a move at all. They're not going forward. They're not falling backwards. They're just stopping to absorb and bring things in. And if I'm being, really optimistic, I'll say that on a scale of 1 to 10, how far we've pushed them more toward our side. Let's just say if they were sitting at a 2, kind of thinking about it, then I would say she's at least at a 5 right now. The 2 people that were in the room. So I understand that there were, well, I can say it because I'm not going to ever say the name, but the individuals, at least one of them, was very openly emotional. And it was only emotional after myself and another individual were kind of tag team and making the point, staying on topic, answering very direct questions that I want to say. She asked. I'm answering what I'm being asked. I'm not volunteering anything. And toward the end, it was, hey, I'm paraphrasing for it, but it was, you know what? I've never stopped to view the world through your eyes. I've never stopped taking that pause. I've never had someone just explain it to me in that way. And she was teary and emotional. And it was based off all facts. I didn't have to pull emotional heartstrings. I didn't mean to. It wasn't the target. But sometimes the truth has a way of doing that, right? And especially when it's being explained from someone that doesn't look like or come from the areas where, you figure, most of your opposition, if you will, in the debate or the conversation comes from. So it left like at least one of the 2.
Bald white guy.
Yeah, bald white guy, a bunch of tattoos,
right,
bad credit, Ford trucks, that kind of.
All that.
But it left a definite emotional impact, and not because I gave a story about, oh, this happened to me. It was a story about what is underneath the things that are being pushed and making factual timelines. Like in the conversation, I didn't just say something without referencing where you can find the fact that. I never do that.
Right.
Like I'll say it. This is what backs it up. There's where you can find it. And it left those individuals at a point of, my God, we went long today. Is there any way we can have another one of these conversations and then another one? And then there's other stuff that I want to talk about too. Can we get into those things? So now I'm a trusted partner. And at least when it comes to the gun thing, the gun control issue, and once again, to recap, these individuals are influential at their state level. This isn't somebody that's just running a local little shelter and doesn't have any impact. Like, these people can affect policy. But she's like, we need to take a look at this, because there are Americans out there that we aren't listening to, but we are impacting with our words and with our decisions if we've never taken their plight or their struggle into consideration the way that they look at the world. And so, I mean, at the end of it, I was just like, okay, you got another friend in me if you need somebody to talk to. And then when I hung up the call, it's like, to myself, it's like, all right, dude, job well done, right? And now you can go ahead and, enjoy that Tabak flavored cigar tonight. You deserve it, right?
Right. And that's another thing. People will say this all the time. Like, I don't know if you saw Amy Dillon's testimony in South Carolina on the open carry issue there, or was it open carry? I believe it was open carry. South Carolina and Florida are like 2 of the only places where there is no provision for open carry of a pistol. And they were talking about permit holders being able to open carry. And for me, everybody knows my position is, well, open carry isn't like a great idea 99.9% of the time, but also it shouldn't be illegal. And if I go around the corner and my jacket blows open, I don't want to be accused of, the equivalency of brandishing in a non-open carry environment. So I think there's all kinds of good practical and philosophical freedom reasons why open carry should be legal. So she was making a great point. She represented gun owners well. She also represented, if you haven't seen it, she represented instructors very, very well, educators, people who actually do this for a living, people who are involved in it part-time, people who care about other people being educated in responsible firearms ownership and use. She did a great job representing that perspective, I thought, as well. And when I posted the video, or I posted the announcement, the link, somebody jumped into the comments and said, yeah, but was she successful? I said yes. And instantly in my head, I'd already seen it by then. So whether it was the link or the video, I said yes, period, post, done. and I didn't go back and sort of explain. I was sort of baiting it a little bit, right? Like I wanted to see if the person was going to say, well, how would you know that? Because I don't know what that person meant. My guess is what they meant by was she successful? Yes. Meaning, you know, if yes would mean that the law was passed. Well, obviously, if the hearing was in a committee, the law wasn't passed that day, right? So that was kind of a silly question if that's what they were asking, but that is what I assume they were actually asking. To me, any of us who go out and speak our truth in a public forum and do it without, you know, something that's obviously embarrassing to the community, or do it without embarrassing ourselves, or do it without, I don't know, empowering the other side in some way other than, and I don't know how you do that because their arguments are wrong, right? Their arguments are flawed. Their arguments aren't based on fact. So kind of the only way you empower the other side really is through your behavior, right? And the way you represent our community, the way you represent yourself, and the way you make your arguments. So I thought she was incredibly successful just because she successfully went out and shared her perspective and did it in a responsible way. Where are you on that whole, you know, saying it to say it is a good enough? Like, because you ended with, you know, you can go have that cigar or whatever. I always say, like, I can look in the mirror, I can put my head on the pillow because I feel like I did the right thing, whether I accomplished some other goal or not. Doing the thing is the goal. Where are you on that?
You know, if you showed up and you did the job and you represented yourself first and everyone else that trusts you to represent their voice in that particular subject matter, if you felt you did the best job that you can do, and yeah, you might criticize yourself. Oh, I should have said this when I said that or whatever. Yeah, you might do that. But if I know that I've shown up and I've given my all, I represented us well, I kept a good character about myself, I can know I can turn and I can look at my family and I can look within myself, and then I can look at other gun owners and say, I did the best. I left it all on the field. I gave it all I had, and I did the best that I could do and within my ability to represent us well in that one moment in time, in that documented conversation that will live forever. Now I'm going to go ahead and walk away knowing I left everything that I got. And then I'm good. I'm happy, right? Because that's all I can do is win, at least try to, if you want to say, win that battle in that moment, understanding there's still a big war that's being fought. But right then and there, giving it all I have to make sure that I'm a representation well of all of us that believe in this this freedom that we're seeking. And that's it. I'm done.
All right, I got two things for you. One, well, actually, real quick before I give you that last one, because we're going to make this the shortest, Rob and Kevin. We're going to be like 34 minutes and we're done. Because I want to post this. I'm going to put it out through Second Amendment Organization because this is good grassroots advocacy primer stuff. This is good information for people that want to go out and do this. And here, if you're a 2AO person watching this in the recording, you've heard me say it. Now you got the Kevin example as well. Sarah is making a good point down there, Sarah Albrecht, on the idea of how we have to respect, or at least treat with respect, the person's emotions when they have lost a loved one, however that happened, right? And certainly not mock it, or certainly capitalize on it even. I think if they open the door and say, this happened to me, now I need to understand this or do more, cool. But on the other hand, we can't just jump into it like, well, your husband wouldn't be dead if, right? I think that's, but I hear people, you know, people do that in the comments. I don't know that people do it as much confrontationally. My question for you then is, what your audience, right? So I get a lot of push on you're losing audience, or you don't understand your audience when I talk about stuff like this in social media, and I critique those who would say, no, never talk to the other side, or the other side won't listen to you, or, you know, we just need to, you know, circle the wagons and be prepared to fight, or there's no dialogue left. I detest that approach so much, and I criticize it quite often. And people are like, well, you don't know your audience. Well, for me, my audience, if I'm talking about gun rights advocacy, isn't the gun community, right? Like, if there's somebody out there that thinks I'm my audience, like when I talk, I'm trying to fill a class. When I post a link to my classes in March, that's when I'm trying to fill that class. If I put out something like earlier, I put out something about safety third. It's a training philosophy piece. If I'm trying to attract people to an instructor development class, that's what I'm doing. When I'm talking about politics, when I'm talking about gun rights advocacy, if I'm trying to change people's minds about guns, I'm not talking to the gun community. Now, this conversation that you and I are having, I think, is much more towards the audience of the gun community, because we're hopefully empowering people, inspiring people, explaining to people how and why it's important to do this and how you do this. When you have somebody that isn't on your ideological purity train or somebody that isn't already aligned with you, you have to go out and do this if we're going to change minds. How do you address that point? Because I know you get some pushback too.
Yeah, you can't. Echo chambers do what? Because it's kind of like going to church. Like, pretty much, now there might be a couple of people that are at church that day to get saved. So they say, hey, if you want to be saved and join us, come on down to the front. But the majority of people in there already believe in God, right? So you're not there to convince them to believe in God. They're already there, right?
There's a reason they say preaching to the choir.
I'm sorry?
There's a reason they say preaching to the choir. It's like,
right. Yeah, you're okay. So we get it. Like, I'm not here to convince people that understand the Second Amendment the way that I understand it, even if they got to it for a different reason, how important it is. You already know, you know, and now if there's some wiggle room in you, yeah, great. And I hope I can secure that. But I'm not here to preach to people that already bleed red, white, and blue and already understand the Constitution and have a concept of historical value and the Second Amendment. I'm not here preaching to you. I'm here maybe to show you have a different ally, right? But I'm not, the echo chambers are great. You have to, you know, it's okay to give it a little energy, a little morale boost, you know, and help them stay in the fight and things like that. Obviously, we have to take care of each other. But the word, you know, I tell people all the time, and I use this because I am a Christian, so I use this as an analogy when it comes to the church. People used to always ask me, hey, how come you don't go to church every Sunday? I was like, well, to convince who? Because my community work is done outside the four walls of the church, to bring other people to the grace of God. So I am not, my work isn't there. My work is outside of the walls. So if you change the church to the gun community, yes, I'm here with you. You know, I'm an ally. You know, I got your back. I hope I can motivate you and get you thinking different and some stuff, and we can all become stronger. Great, right? But my true work is outside of these walls. It's outside of those private Facebook groups. It's outside of there. Right? To get people to understand that I am here as a representative of many things. Father, black man, American, gun owner. I'm here as many things. However, whatever I'm here to talk to you about today, I'm here to represent that community and be a voice and hopefully someone that you would trust to exchange information, understanding, worldviews with in this moment. So I'm not there even to just talk to that one individual. I tell people all the time, when I speak to people, I'm never just talking to Rob. I'm talking to everybody that shares Rob's mindset, right? So I don't know when I show up and if a senator calls me, like I've had a couple of times, and they're asking me questions, I don't know who else they're going to share this information with. I could be talking to an entire committee and have no idea, right? So I'm always going to represent well, but I realize that, yeah, I come back to the pool of the Second Amendment every now and then to get that push, that pat on the back, that, hey, dude, do the right thing, go out there, we need you. But then I'm leaving, I'm getting my sack, I'm leaving, and I'm going out into the wilderness to do the real work.
So you talk about worrying about that rest of the audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much, on a scale of like 0 to 503, how much do you worry about the audience of the gun community that are going to say, oh, you just had a rational conversation with somebody and you accepted that they were only moving to a 5? That's not good enough. You compromised. You're a betrayer, compromiser, weak, line crosser, whatever word, lowering the bar, whatever the word of the day is. How do you even factor in worrying about them when you're talking to the people who really are the audience for change?
No, you know, and it's not to call anybody a child. So nobody take what I'm about to say as I'm equating you with a child. I'm not doing that. I'm just making an analogy that's easy to digest. I could be having a conversation with my kid's principal, and my kid can hear some things. It's like, man, my dad is not here for my best interest. He's not saying things that align with what I believe that is right for me, right? So he's clearly going against my interest. But my son needs to trust that I understand what I'm doing, right? So that's the same thing. If you can't, someone with that mentality should ask himself this. I put up a video. It's a couple of years now, so it's a dated video, and it's called Into the Lion's Den, and it's still up on YouTube. It's called Into the Lion's Den. I went into a room with 30, and I mean 30 anti-gun, local and some state level politicians, right? All anti-gun. I was invited there by one of them that was flip-flopping on the gun issue. Still, you know, a Democrat, still a liberal, but was kind of like, okay, this gun thing, I went to train with Kevin. I've had conversations with him, came to an Aiming for the Truth event, you know, things of that nature, and said, okay, I want you to come into the room and I want you to address the gun topic when it comes up. And they had it on their agenda. So they bring up the gun topic, and you know, everybody's going about how, hey, we don't like guns. We need to get guns off the street. And I'm just sitting there. I haven't said a word. And then it became time for the Q&A or a response, and I was called upon. And by the end of that, by the end of my testimony in that room, it led to several questions being asked. I didn't take it personal. I answered the questions. And it led to all of those individuals in the room applauding me, right? And so when I put that video up, there were people that were like, oh, but, you know, how do we know what you did? You were in a lion's den. How do we know you didn't get devoured? And, you know what, dude, here it is, man. There are two different ways I can answer that. One is the analogy I gave earlier, and the back that went up to say that you need to trust. If you don't trust me, you shouldn't support me. You shouldn't even be watching me that way to even have an opinion about what I'm doing. You need to understand and trust me that if we're going to win a war, we all have different paths to walk. This is one that's been put in front of me, and I'm going to go represent us the best way I can in this moment with the intelligence and acumen that I have. And then there is the childish part of me that says you can devour my lower parts if you think that I'm going to be a traitor just because I walk into a room that seems to have people that are thinking differently than me. Then how do you think the world operates when I don't share with you what rooms I went into? And then the last thing is, well, ask yourself this. If you're only talking in rooms with people that absolutely agree with you, what real change are you bringing about? So maybe you don't trust yourself under the pressure. Maybe you're actually trying to project that upon me because I'm solid in my belief of the Second Amendment. Are you? And that's what I will leave people with.
I like it. I'm going to link that. I'm going to find that video. I'm going to link it when I post this on the blog. So I'm going to put this into a kind of a conceptual piece about why it's important to step into the lion's den, as you said, or even just you know, outside a little bit and be comfortable out there. And if you're not comfortable out there, cool, stay home. But I think the mix is the people who think they're doing good when they're just like lobbing grenades, right? When they walk into that room and they say, shall not be infringed, and they wait for the applause, and they're like, oh, I'm not in my own room with the people that get the shall not be infringed thing. Like, I actually have to make an argument here, you know? So I think that's important. My go-to video, I'm probably going to put, I'll put a link to this. I did a video interview, word I was looking for, on the Young Turks with Cenk Unger on 5-6 years ago, and everybody said, don't do it, don't do it, don't go there. He's just going to embarrass you, he's going to yell at you, he's going to twist your words. And it was a rational, reasoned discussion that I've got more positive feedback on from inside and outside the community. Is it's been a good one. So I'll put that in the link. I'll put your Lions Den one out there, and I see a few people down here, again, who jumped in and just said thanks and they appreciate this and sort of agreeing with what we've got going on. And thank you guys all for tuning in. And somebody said it was refreshing to hear a level-headed conversation on this topic. And with that, 36 minutes we went. Shortest Rob conversation with Kevin ever. And have a good night, man. Thanks.
All right, no problem. Thank you, man. Talk to you guys soon.